I'd like to reiterate a couple of things I said at the beginning, and I don't have, of course, any adequate answer to this, how we're going to move forward, but with any certainty. But I think two things are clear, and I want to disagree. I think, if I understood what Gary was saying a little bit, with a couple of points he made. First of all, I believe education is the first step to making any progress at all. And as somebody who looks at public opinion polls, and I've taught political science for a long time, and meets with people and talks to people, I'm appalled at the level of ignorance and the lack of awareness about, again, the advantages that white people have and have had, and myself included, and have taken advantage of. And also the lack of empathy and understanding of how issues relate to the lives of people who are minorities. Okay? So I think we have to go into the classes and we have to begin a wholesale education program, and you have to make people think. In my own life, two things were very important to me. One is that in junior high school, the junior high school I went to, and it was a relatively affluent Massachusetts suburb, ranked everybody in divisions. So the D1 people were all the best, the D2 were second, D3, and like the D15. And I used to end up as a middle school student in D2 or D3. And the overwhelming number of students in D1 were, and I'm using the word girls because this is 7th and 8th grade you're talking about, not women. They dominated those divisions. And when I got to high school, all of a sudden I was in the top class in math and French and everything else, and I looked around and where had all the girls gone in the 9th grade? They were taking business courses, and they had decided on a non-college track. Now when I was younger, I knew something was wrong. I knew that I didn't belong in D1, that these students were better than I was. And I always, I didn't understand the dynamics of it, the dynamics of the discriminatory process that was taking place, the expectations that women would go to work and marry the boss and do that kind of thing. But the more I thought about it, I realized the inequity, and it did bother me. But thinking about whiteness, I think the critique of whiteness in the way it's been presented for at least people like me, who reap the benefits of being white, is a tremendously important thing, and people should stop and think about it. How in your life did you benefit? In a sense, how was whiteness property to you that you could exploit and use? And I think if you are a religious or moral person, it does bother you. And I believe you have to first of all plant the seed that people will begin to think about the lives they've lived, how they've treated others, and so forth. And from there, you may be able to make some real progress. The second point I want to make is, and again, it's my political background, I believe that we have to adopt what's a largely anti-fascist politics in this country. If you look at the militarization of the police, the fact that militias and private citizens are shooting people along the borders, I interviewed people in the Mexican foreign ministry, for example, and one of the questions we asked about were services that they provided to Mexicans in the United States, whether they were here legally or illegally. And the number of cases where people have been beaten, shot, and were appalling. And they said, we give complete service, help to anybody who comes in, regardless of how they, in the consulate, in the embassy, regardless of how they came to the United States. But the point is that there is a right-wing movement out there now that's advocating violence, killing gays, minorities, illegal immigrants, and so forth. And to deny this is a mistake, because that's how people like Adolf Hitler and others came to power. I would like to see people become increasingly sensitive to any of that kind of activity, where if somebody makes hateful statements on television, that you retaliate by writing not only to the station, but by telling the people who sponsor the program, I'm not going to buy your product. We're not going to stand for this kind of stuff any longer. So my answer would be, the best way to start would be intensive education, which we're not going to have as long as the President of the United States can be barred from making an address to students, let's face it, across the country in many school systems. As long as colleges don't require a course in minority history or diversity very early on in the curriculum, I don't see any real progress, so I think they should do those things. But I think also there has to be consistent resistance to people who try to intimidate others, people who make threats to others, people who use the public airways to demean people, to make, to develop stereotypes. You can't silence them in a free society forcibly, but you can say, all right, if you continue to, broadcast this program and you sponsor it, then we're not using your products. We're going to boycott the station and so forth. I would like to see that done on a wide scale. I would like people to become sensitive to the fact that anytime people are advocating injustices against other Americans, people living in this country, we should resist.
So I appreciate that, but I still disagree. I think that yes, there is, particularly right now, something special about the right-wing movement that you're talking about. But we're not just looking at right now. On both sides of the equation, we have had people who are racist, white supremacists, left and right. I moved into New Haven in 2000, and an extremely liberal city. I mean, you don't get much more liberal unless you go to California. And when I moved into the city, I'm listening to people talk to me, left-wing, artsy, you know, long hair, sandals, those kind of people talk to me, and I'm wondering, am I in the Northeast or the South? Right now, I know the Northeast has racism, and I actually think it's particularly egregious because we try to act like it's not there. But that needs to be dealt with. And as long as we frame it in terms of the right is doing X, Y, and Z, we're never going to talk about what's going on the left. And I think the left is a lot of that invisible stuff. So a lot of what we're talking about are the visible things. I can see the visible things coming. I can't see the invisible things. I think those are the things we need to talk about. And educating people is not just reading a book about what happened before. It's not just saying, well, I feel bad for those people. You don't understand what happened to those people. We want to put ourselves in a place where it's easy to deal with these things. And it is easy for a person to say, well, I feel bad for that person. It's not easy to identify with the person who may be like you, who you don't want to identify with, so that you have to do some critical questioning of what you may be doing today. Those are the things I'm talking about. So I'm not disagreeing in an absolute term, but I'm saying that if we're really going to do this, the critical work is the difficult work, and the conversations we have take us away from that type of work.